Hey there everyone. It's been a while since I've produced much in the way of content, but this is the first of what I hope is going to be an ongoing and long-lasting series. I'm calling it Things That Bug Me, and I think that, the title is pretty self-explanatory. And so the point, or at least one of the points, is to shine a light on some of the, stupid, pointless, ridiculous, wasteful stuff that we do in the world. And have a good moan about it. That's part of it. But also to try and see if there aren't opportunities and possibilities that lie latent within these things that could, with a tweak, with a transformation, with a bit of alchemy, that these things could actually maybe turned into something positive, maybe even transformative. So I'll just take a few minutes to explain the structure and order of how I see this going. And then I'm going to launch into my own little tirade. But it's not always going to be just me. In fact, I hope it's not very often going to be just me. I'm going to be reaching out to people and inviting them to come and share things that bug them. Indeed, if you, as a viewer of this, you've got something, oh, this thing really bugs me, and you would like to come on here and share with whatever small audience I have the things that bug you, then reach out to me in the comments and I will get back to you. And so broadly speaking, I see it breaking down into three parts. So part one is going to be explaining the thing that bugs you and just having a good spleen venting about it, like really get it out of your system, unload, swearing, whatever is, not a problem. Just say it as you want to say it with no holds barred. And I hope to have some fun with that, right? Like having some fun and having a laugh is a big part of this. The second part is kind of a little bit of introspection and self-inquiry, right? Like, having explained this thing that bugs you, like what is it in you that this thing hooks onto that causes this kind of emotional reaction? And this can be quite personal. Not everyone's going to want to get into this exploration, and it may not always be particularly applicable, but that's a part of this as well, right? As an opportunity to share a little bit of one's own psyche, right? Like what is it in me that gets triggered by this thing? And then the third part is what I spoke of briefly earlier on, is there something in this that could actually be a lesson, right? Is there an alchemy that could take place that could turn this dreadful, annoying, stupid, wasteful thing into something positive, into something beautiful, maybe, possibly even into something transformative? And so yeah, the notion of alchemy, turning the negative into a positive by really doing not much more than changing one's perspective on a thing. That's something I'd really like to try and explore in this also. So that's kind of what the show's about. Call it a show. It's not really a show. It's just a conversation. In this case, a monologue. But I hope that over time it will actually start to attract people who see that, this is somewhere that they can offload something and maybe bring something, bring something new, bring a new insight, bring a new possibility into articulation. All right, so I think that's it. I think it's pretty straightforward. I think that's it for my introduction. And so now I will get on with my moan of the moan du jour, which is about daylight saving. One more thing to mention, I suspect it's only a matter of time before I end up saying something that's going to piss off the YouTube censors. And so I'm going to be starting a Rumble channel as well, and I'll be putting everything up on Rumble as well as on YouTube. And if there's stuff that I feel I can't put on YouTube, I'll put a little message on the video saying, go to Rumble to see the full version of this video. If you don't see that message, then it'll be the same on both platforms. But I don't really want to get my YouTube channel cancelled, but at the same time I don't want to feel censored, and so I'm going to start a Rumble channel for this series. Alright, so let's get into it. So in order to fully understand just how ridiculous this is, I feel it necessary to impart a little bit of information and use a couple of diagrams to explain a couple of things for those that may not already be familiar with all of this. Daylight saving, the notion of it goes back to the early 1900s, and the world was obviously a very different place there, right? We didn't have electric lighting and telephones and mobiles and internet and all of that kind of stuff, so the world was a very different place, and it was brought into being because it felt some people felt like with it getting light at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, we're wasting those daylight hours, right? And so by moving the clocks forward, it's getting light that little bit later, and it stays light that little bit later, and so our days are effectively longer. And so that was the idea behind it. But as I say, this is much less important in the modern world. So although you can sort of understand the reasoning behind the origins of the idea, the reality of it is absolutely ridiculous. So here's a couple of diagrams that explain exactly how it exists in the world. Alright, so first is this. The blue ones is where daylight saving is used, the orange ones is where it has been used in the past but not anymore, and the red ones is where it's never been used. And so essentially blue is where daylight saving is used and everything else is where it's not used. And so you can see it's a real mishmash of some countries using it and some countries not using it. And so this is one layer of confusion, is this non-ubiquity of adoption. And so time differences, twice a year, time differences change between countries that sort of know, oh, it's 6 hours between here and there or 3 hours between here and there, whatever. Twice a year that changes and adds a layer of confusion. So this is my objection to daylight saving, is the confusion, right? The unnecessary confusion that it throws into the world. So this is part one of it, but it gets much, much worse than this. Next is this diagram here, and so this shows the dates on which daylight saving is applied in various different places around the world. And I mean, you can see just by looking at the diagram what a mess it is. It's different weekends. Sometimes it's Friday, sometimes it's Saturday, sometimes it's Sunday. It's different weeks in different places in all over the world, and so this adds another ridiculous layer of confusion to the whole daylight saving thing. So not only do not all countries do it, but countries that do it, they do it at different times. They go backwards and forwards at different times. And so time differences change between countries for a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, whatever, while they're catching up with each other with changing their clocks around. So this is another serious level of unnecessary confusion thrown into it. But there is more. Even within countries. So this is the United States, for example, and you can see there's 2 states on there, Arizona and Hawaii, as well as some of the other things which I can't remember what they're called, governed regions or governed areas or something like, I can't remember what they're called, but anyway, Guam and so on. They don't do daylight savings, but all of the rest of the US does. And so even within the country itself, time differences from state to state are fluctuating unnecessarily. And so this adds an extra layer of confusion for anyone within the United States talking to someone in Arizona, you know, having a meeting with someone in Arizona, or anyone outside of the United States having a meeting with someone in Arizona, as opposed to any of the other states, is going to make mistakes with turning up at the meeting at the right time. And then the last graphic I want to share with you is what happens in Australia. And so these are the time differences between Europe and Australia at daylight savings time, because the 3 states across the top, the +8, the +9.5 and the +10, those 3 states don't participate in daylight saving, but the 2 states at the bottom, South Australia and Victoria, they do participate in daylight saving. Sorry, New South Wales, South Australia and New South Wales do, and Queensland, Queensland, Western Australia and Northern Territories do not. Tasmania does as well. But anyway, so even within the same country, you've got half the country doing daylight saving, the other half of the country not doing daylight saving. And so again, if you're in business with or in communication with someone in Australia, you can't look at Australia time. You've got to figure out whether their state, you've got to figure out the particulars of their state. And so the long and short of all of this is that daylight saving and the way that it's implemented, with everyone, oh, we're going to do it this weekend at this time on this day, irrespective of how it coordinates with everybody else. Like in a world where countries are not connected to each other and people don't know, you know, people only know each other in their own, it doesn't really matter that much. But in this world, where everyone is connected to each other all the time, even calendars, even automatic calendars can't keep up with all of this nonsense, you know. Even, you know, it is so totally and utterly ridiculous. And this leads into this leads into the sort of third bit, the alchemy bit. But and if it just shows how pathetically awful we are at global coordination, right? That we can't even realize the damage being done by every country out for itself, figuring out its own strategy around daylight saving. But before I get to that, just the second part, this the what does it trigger in me? Like why does it upset me? I mean, my emotional response is not actually that great to this. It's more of an intellectual outrage. It's more something like that, right? There's the unnecessary stupidity of adding confusion to an already pretty confusing world, right? Like just the unnecessary addition of even more disorientation and confusion. It just seems punitive. I mean, it seems like if you had a bunch of guys sitting around a room somewhere, how can we make the world even more disorienting and confused? And someone comes like, oh, I know, get everyone to move their clocks around at different times, right? That would really fuck everybody's action up, right? And it does. As a person who hosts a couple of regular Zoom calls every week, I know exactly the confusion that it generates. Twice a year for that 3 week period, while everyone's moving their clocks around at different times, the number of people that turn up an hour late or an hour early for meetings, in fact, it's the majority. The majority of people get confused. It's not like a small thing. The majority of people get confused. And so magnify that to the whole fucking world and all of the people that are interacting with each other across these time zone borders and the do and don't do daylight savings, and you can see how much frustration and wastefulness it's throwing into the world. So yeah, like I said, my emotional reaction is limited, but the degree of outrage and frustration that, like, why I cannot get my head around why we would do this. I'll just catch my breath for a moment before I calm down and get into the, where what could actually be found in this, because a couple of things have occurred to me in thinking about the making of this video. A couple of things have occurred to me, and I feel like one of them is kind of quite profound, but you can be the judge of that. And so, yeah, the first thing I've already alluded to, right? Like the idea of, if we could actually get together as a global community and say, hey, we can all agree this daylight saving thing, the way it currently works, is ridiculous. It's wasting a whole bunch of time on for a whole bunch of people, including us. No doubt, I have no doubt that government officials are one of the groups of people that suffer worst with all of this. Because they are having to. Anyway, so I feel like there is an opportunity here to come together over something which it's an obvious problem and a relatively easy one to solve, right? Like, are we going to continue to do daylight saving at all? Does it have any relevance in today's world? And if we agree that it does, then can we at least agree that we all do it on the same day, at the same, that we all do it on the same day around the world? It would seem to me to be a relatively simple global coordination issue to get together and figure out. And if we could get together and figure it out, it would be albeit relatively small, but nevertheless a stepping stone, right? Like something we can, this is something we did actually get together and discuss kindly and meaningfully and sensibly, and hear everyone's views and come to an agreement that we could all live with, and made the world a simpler, easier place to live in, right? Like, it's something that we could look back on and say we actually accomplished that. So that's one thing. That's one opportunity I see. The other one is kind of bigger, more encompassing, more profound, but I see it as an opportunity to maybe reduce our reliance on clocks in general. I mean, we're so deeply entrenched in working to schedules and appointments and stuff, but it's actually pretty recent. Like, it's only with the railway network that the necessity for coordinating clocks across distances, so that this clock had the same time as this clock, and we knew what time to get to the train station to get the train, that sort of thing. It's only a couple of hundred years, right, like, that we've been entrenched in this living according to schedules. It's really very recent, and so I see this as an opportunity maybe to actually reduce our dependence on clocks entirely, to let go of our addiction to Chronos and embrace a little bit more of Kairos. These are sort of two ways of thinking about time, two modes of time. And Chronos is the one we're familiar with, right? Like linear time, 1 minute follows the next, every minute is equal to every other minute, and things happen according to schedules, and schedules usually imposed by the outside world, some external thing, a railway network or a boss or whatever, imposing schedules on us, and that's the time that we live in, is Chronos time, that linear scheduled highly structured, ordered form of time. But Kairos is a whole different thing. Kairos is things happen when they happen. They happen when they are ready to happen, according to the nature of the thing to which it is happening, right? And there's a sensitivity and a connectedness and personal involvement in the unfolding of Kairos time, which is very different to Chronos time. And so just maybe addressing this notion of daylight saving and more broadly time zones in general is also an opportunity for us to re-examine our relationship with time itself, and maybe, you know, release the grip of Chronos a little bit and allow a little bit more of that Kairos in. Okay, I think that's everything I have to say. I hope you like the idea of this, and like I said at the start, if you do like the idea of this and you've got something you want to get off your chest and something which you feel, you know, has got a potential nugget embedded in it that could bring something cool to the world, then do please get in touch. I'd love to hear from you. And like I said, I shall be reaching out to my network. I have already started doing that. I'll be reaching out to my network to try and get people to volunteer to come on here and do this themselves. And when I can't do that, I will do one myself. Ideally, I'd like to have a sort of regular schedule for this, but for right now, we'll just see how it unfolds, and see what kind of feedback we get. All right, thank you very much for watching. I will see you next time.